So if you came for the business case to upgrade ColdFusion in 5 easy steps, you're in the right place. If you got lost, it's okay. It's nice and warm in here. There's a pillow underneath your chair. Have a nice nap. We'll kind of nudge you awake in about 50 minutes. I'd like to get an idea of who I have in here so I can tune the presentation to fit you. How many people are on 2011 versions of ColdFusion? CF11. Okay, how about earlier than that? What do you got?
Everything.
Nice.
Lots of clients.
A panoply of ColdFusion.
Even have one on MX6.
Woo, boy.
0.1.
That's impressive. What about you?
11.
Okay. Who's on 2016? So you're in here to figure out how to get to 18.
No, we're at 2018.
You're on 2018. Okay, well, thanks for showing up. I mean, I appreciate it. It sounds like you already have this figured out. So I'm going to adjourn the presentation to allow this man to explain how we got it done.
No, I don't know if you'll touch on it. I was interested in how you try to explain to your bosses why you should stay on ColdFusion and the business case for why ColdFusion is worth staying on, not going to Java or .NET.
So if you didn't hear the question, he said maybe I should talk about convincing bosses on why to stay with ColdFusion. So I'll make you a promise. If I get through this and we have a few minutes left, I'm happy to expound upon that. So let me give you my background. I started in ColdFusion in 1999, which makes me a pretty old man. At least that's how I feel when I get up in the morning. Worked on basically all the versions, doing all kinds of things from small startups to large enterprises. And I made the shift about 4 years ago into product marketing, and my head was blown. Like the way that this other sides of the fence see the world was so different than how I saw it that what I'd like to do is give you a tiny glimpse at how that is so you can make your case in the most convincing way. Before I joined a marketing group, I thought marketers were idiots. Anyone share that opinion? I can confess that is actually the truth. I am on the marketing side, so I can sort of talk to that. But like I say, the calculus is just a little bit different. So I've prepared a Dilbert for you. Go ahead and read this. I won't be reading my slides to you if I can help it. It's always easier telling people what to do than having to do it yourself. So in 1999, I joined a startup. It was super fun and worked there for a while, and then became a senior consultant after having a full 10 months experience in computer programming. Of course, that was the .com days. If you could spell computer, you could get a job. I think that's how I got it. It doesn't have 2 P's if you're asking. The company I ended up working for once the .com crash hit was an insurance company who's known for being forward-thinking and they're not. They were super laggards. And we stayed on ColdFusion 4.5 until 2005. So I missed a number of really great versions. And I think what was important about that for me is, did it really change our applications? Maybe, maybe not. But what it did to me as a person was really just demotivate me to do my very best. If the company couldn't invest $1,000 in keeping me on something modern, then I didn't really feel like my work was very valued. So if you feel like that, this is a cause worth pursuing because you should feel engaged at your company. So what we're going to talk about is how do you take this case and go to your boss, because if you tell them I'm just not engaged unless you upgrade, you're likely to be invited to be successful elsewhere. So let's look at the language. These are the most common reasons I've heard for not upgrading. Anyone have any others that show up? It's not in the budget. That's a great one. We have other priorities. Well, what are they? We don't need that now. What all these really reduce down to is they don't understand. If they did, they'd be doing it. So when you say something in techie like, blah, 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 we should upgrade ColdFusion, and the output is one of these, what that means is you haven't been understood because you're framing your problem the wrong way. So this is the way budgets work. Everything gets a line item. You're supposed to plot out what you want at the beginning of the year. Everything gets a row. Everything totals up at the bottom to a number, and anything that gets injected in the middle of the year doesn't really have a spot. So what you want to do is figure out how can you become a line item, because once you are, it's hard to to get your money taken away. But if you don't have a line item, it's a very uphill battle. So one thing you might consider is, instead of approaching it as, we should upgrade now, I just came back from the conference, best thing ever, got to spend the money, rah, 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 work it in for the next year's budget, and it'll probably be an easier conversation. More Dilberts. Read this one. This is super fun. You didn't know there'd be an eye test, did you? What is this saying? Substitute the word security for testing. Substitute security for the word performance or anything else. But this is how work happens, right? I mean, time really expands to fill up all the tasks we can put in it, and at the end of the day, like, things often get punted, and upgrades are one of those things. So I think we have to just agree that this is how it works, and don't get upset when, you know, an upgrade isn't something that we can push through, or you don't have time to do your job completely. So let's talk about some of the manager ease that we can use. I've got basically three framings here. One is internal rate of return. And this is a metric that companies use to sort of agree that what they're going to invest in is better than what they could have invested in the company. Most companies have what's called a hurdle rate, and what this is the expected return for a capital investment. And so a company may say, we want to invest our money internally at 14%, so you need to prove that your request will produce 14% internal rate of return. If so, it gets funded. If not, there's better opportunities out there. We could spend all 60 minutes on this, and it would be just as fun as you think it would. The other one is return on investment. This is more common. This is an efficiency metric that you can use for external comparisons. So you may choose to frame your investments in this way. But the most important one is this right-hand column, negative. And if you take nothing away from this presentation, people buy to avoid pain. And pain in business, the best pain that gets the pocketbook unfurled is compliance fears, security fears, or publicity fears. There's an unlimited amount of potential money to fill these particular holes. May not seem obvious, but it is. So let's look a little bit at security here. Once again, an eye test, but I think these are really interesting numbers. So what I did was I tried to look at, what happens in the security world, and I think we can all agree that it's an interesting time to be alive. I was just talking with someone earlier today about the Friendster guy. I don't know if you remember, or it was the MySpace guy who wrote this self-propagating worm to have everyone add him as a friend. You guys remember that? Anyone not remember that? That's over the age of 40. Nice. So, ever since then, we now have these, crypto hackers that'll come in and encrypt all of your stuff and then politely charge you a consulting fee to unencrypt it. Like, this happens a lot. Has it happened in your areas? Has anyone had that happen to their data? Nice. We'll get on to why that is in a second. But if you look at what the chief marketing officer thinks, they think that brand incidences affect their value even years after a security incident. So it isn't as if there's an incident and everyone forgets. I got one word for you. Equifax? Anyone like that company? I mean, that was a couple years ago, wasn't it? Like, we have Equifax as one of our customers, and we don't talk about them. We should. They do great stuff, but at the end of the day, they're kind of looped in with some unsavory reputation, and it doesn't really work out. So that's just one example of how security can cause an effect. Did you have a question?
Didn't ColdFusion get hacked a few years ago when the code base got stolen?
I remember something like that. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, somewhere right now is somebody that's smarter than you and makes about $2 a day. And they don't like that. So they're trying to figure out how to make some money. If they can get credit cards and sell them, they'll do it. If they can encrypt your file thing, they'll do it. Because you know what, on the internet, the other person doesn't exist. You know what I mean? It's not like you're hurting anybody, it's just a random thing. Anyway, so security is an important topic, and it's also super deep because security is a specter. So you may choose to sell your upgrade internally as it's important to stay with the right security, because if not, this kind of data can get stolen. Does anybody have any health data they work on? PCI compliance? Anybody part of a publicly traded company? It's no longer enough to, require sophisticated passwords, because, when you leak data and something happens, you'll end up with these type of costs. And now what's important about this is, we talked earlier about line items and budgets. And when you talk about line items and budgets, that's planning. But if you have an incident, that's reactive spending. And that's no good, because it starts taking money away from the line items. Like, you have to spend that money because you have an active problem. For example, if your house is on fire, you would go purchase some buckets, wouldn't you? Weren't in the budget, they are now. So, if you store this kind of data, these are the sort of facets you might have to deal with once you get into reactive nature. Interestingly enough, depending on the type of data that you have, SecureWorks sort of calculated out what it costs per stolen record. So if you have 1 million records in your database and you're doing healthcare, it's $380 million. A lot of money. How much is ColdFusion again? Not that much. Now, you may think to yourself, why would I go into my boss and sell them on the fact that there's this evil security specter that could raise its head? Isn't ColdFusion the secure platform? Why, yes it is. In fact, it's one of the most secure platforms. But if you're on ColdFusion 6.1, guess what? You ain't had a security patch in a few minutes, and you won't. The ColdFusion team can't just continue to support all versions since the beginning of time. They have about a 5-year window where they'll do support, and if you pay a little extra, they'll extend it a year. You get even less value there because you should be upgrading at that point. So I think it's okay to walk in and frame this as security is a big deal. We've got to stay on top of it. And this is a secure platform, so it's worth continual investment. Because that's one of the things you get for your money. Like if you use Ruby, for example, who's in charge of Ruby security? They don't have a big corporate benefactor. Adobe is. They can stay on top of this type of stuff. Remember Columbo? Nice. Love it when the jokes work. Probably my best feature ever. So those of you who know me know that I used to moonlight as a performance analysis and tuning guy. So you'd call me if your servers were on fire, and I would help you make them not on fire. And there's a number of tuning levers I would use for this. The one that always mystified me the most was tuning the dang web server connector. The other one was locking down the server. So in the new version of ColdFusion, it has a scripted lockdown process that goes through all of these steps. Remember, Brian, I said I would put 7.5 on my slides. There it is. So there's 15 steps that you get. It runs automatically. If it fails, it rolls itself back. But this puts your server in a very safe configuration. So now when I used to have to lock down servers manually, it's a multi-hour process. How many servers you got? How much money do you make? Very easy ROI calculation. But that's not the only thing, because once again, what you want is consistency. Because sure, you're locking down and you're on step 9 and the phone rings and you answer it and go right to step 11. Are you going to remember that? Going back to the $380 million breach potential, like this is a small price to pay, forget consistency. Let's move to the next topic. I like this one. The enemy. The enemy. The enemy. What am I talking about? Did you know you were coming here for the insults? Please tip your waiters and waitresses. So essentially, what we've got is, in my pocket, I've got this magic device that didn't exist 20 years ago, and I can tap on it, and stuff will show up at my house in 2 days or less. Isn't that amazing? Like, all UI is beautiful, it all works the way it's supposed to, and all the imagery is nice, there's no page shipping anymore. Like, this is the way people think. How many people work on business to consumer apps? How many work on internal apps? How How many build stuff that looks like that? I mean, sure, Apple has all the money in the world, and they can spend lots of money on UX testing and designers, and maybe you can. But when I use your application, my expectation is it's going to work nice and look nice, and not make me have to sort of parse all this nonsense or use extra steps. This is how people think now. We have to adjust to this. Now, if you think about even just something as simple as how quick your application responds, there are well-known metrics that can calculate how much money you'll lose per extra second of response time. In fact, if I do the math, and by doing the math I mean read the note on my slide, an e-commerce site that makes $100,000 a day would lose about 2.5 mil in lost sales every year from just one extra second of delay. A lot of money. How much is ColdFusion upgrade again? Not that much of it. I have to look it up. Now you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't do e-commerce. Who doesn't do e-commerce? Who likes answering in the negative? Who won't raise their hand no matter what I say? No one fell for that. This is sad. So in internal applications, what you have basically is people just not doing what you want. So imagine you have this. For example, we have this thing at work where if you want to have another team do something, you put in a ticket, and the tickets work for all kind of groups that didn't used to use tickets, and the thing is slow, so guess who doesn't put in tickets? This guy. I'll just send an email, hey, can you help me out with this? And now work isn't being tracked, no one has visibility, blah, 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 blah. Like, I know the evils of it, but I can't use this system, it's terrible. We have salespeople, they're supposed to put in notes about what the deal is about. I go in and look at it and figure out what we're going to do to sell more stuff. It's blank. Why is it blank? So non-compliance, I think, is one of the biggest issues with apps, because you've invested lots of money in the app, but an app that falls in the forest and no one uses it, is it really an app? So if you're talking about, once again, I spent a long time analyzing and tuning applications. So this is the processes that you go through. You can profile the code. In some cases, you want to swap algorithms because they're faster. You can take slow libraries and put faster ones in. You can unroll loops. You can, why would you want to do all this? It's just a lot better if you didn't have to do this, because this is a long process. It doesn't usually lead to the most optimized and readable code. The nice thing is, in ColdFusion 2018, you get free performance improvements. Who likes free stuff? This is dramatic improvements. You can have these slides later. You promised at the left of my notes, my sophomore designs, and images I yanked from the internet. But essentially, if you're going from 2016 to 2018, 30% increase. That you don't have to do anything about it. It's like the hardest thing in the world is to go into running code and change it, especially if you didn't write it. From CF11 to 2018, it's even more dramatic. Now, how does this work for real applications, you might ask? Funny you ask that. I have a slide on this. The team profile running applications. And here are the results. Anybody use the framework one? Anybody use the model blue? That makes me sad. It was a really good framework. More Dilbert. Sweet, huh? Yeah. So, what else do you get in this Magic 2018? Well, they have a performance monitor. Now, I used to, like I say, troubleshoot apps, and the only way you can troubleshoot apps is with data. If you sit there and try CF dumping your way and analyzing performance problems, you're not going to get very far. And I would counsel company after company and developer after developer why their code was wrong. And they'd never agree with me at first. Why would they? But I have data. Now, usually, he has data that wins, and if you use 2018, you get this centralized monitoring system that basically, the nice thing about it is it's not stuck in your application. It lives somewhere else. Because what really happens if an application is thrashing, there's no memory to run the performance monitor. But in the one that's built into ColdFusion, it runs in a separate process. So if you're in a hectic situation and the server's flapping or it's super full of memory and not loading, you won't have an issue getting the metrics because they run in a separate process. In fact, you can actually auto-detect the configuration of your servers and even find them on your network. So setting it up is super easy. And what I like about it most is it does end-to-end performance monitoring. From when the request comes in, to when it goes to the web server connector, to when it goes to the database, or even external processes, it comes all the way back. You've got discrete metrics of what happened, how long it took, and so on. And that helps. Because, the true fact is, what people would end up doing is they create some application, put it on production, and be like, well, it runs super fast on my machine. When there's 100,000 or 1 million records in the table later, guess what? They run that fast. But in development, it's not a problem. I don't know what's going on. I'm looking at it right here, and it's super quick. But once again, in runtime conditions, it's a different world. So how are you going to inspect that? Who changes code on production? Anyone do their debugging on production? Nice. My hat's off to you, sir, if I had a hat. So I'm going to give you 5 years worth of performance troubleshooting and tuning knowledge in one single slide. Are you ready for this? It's free. Seems simple, right? True story. There's a company who sells education stuff, and they called up and said, look, we have some consulting for you. We need you to figure out what's going on. There's no extra consulting work at the end of this. All right, it's a fair deal. You get my highest bill rate, right? And I go through, I stick everything in there, and they have this one page that runs 936 queries. Wow. That's what I said. Now that normally would be a problem, but not a large problem. The secondary problem was some genius, for very good reasons, which we won't go into here, decided the right way to fix a database crash was stand up a new database in AWS and point the server to it. Once again, not a bad idea, except for their application servers were not in AWS. There's about a 10 to 12 to 15 millisecond latency tax for every query. Now, if you're doing math, I know math is hard, you're looking at 10 plus seconds database time just to load this page. Now, if you think about an e-commerce site, what is like the most important page, right? What is it? Order page? It was, in fact, the order page. So I went to the developer and explained to him what the problem was, and he told me I was wrong. I don't know if I'd say it that way, but let's look at your code. And he eventually got invited to be successful elsewhere because he refused to see what was happening. Now, it wasn't really his fault because he didn't have data. But if you're using this performance monitor, you get the slow query log. And you would be able to see how long runtime queries are taking and which ones to pay attention to first. Because most of this stuff can be solved through indexing properly. You ship code, you build something a certain way, and use it differently later, and the index isn't getting picked up. Simple fix, you know what the problem is. But I think where people get messed up is when you're in development, you have no records, no indexes are being used anyway. And then in production, the person that owns the database probably isn't you. And the requests that come in to the app server don't get recorded in the database. You don't really know what caused what. There's an information disconnection. So this performance monitor puts people out of work. But that's good for you, isn't it? Like I say, this company that paying well into the 6 figures because there actually was consulting at the end of the project once they figured out I knew how to spell computer with only one P. And, someone else could have done this. It really wasn't that difficult. Another thing that will save you a lot of time and also help out a lot is the interoperability updates in ColdFusion. So who has tried to use, API calls and got stuck on nulls? Nulls was like the biggest problem in ColdFusion and API for a very long time. It's been solved. They now have typed arrays. Why would you want that? Once again, ColdFusion being a loosely typed language doesn't really have an idea of what a data type is. But things like JSON require data types. It needs to know this is a number and this is not. Otherwise, you know, goofy stuff happening. Or if you're talking to a strongly typed language, data types are also super important. So now, not only do you have null support and typed array support, but you have JSON data where it'll actually interpret what the data types are and try to maintain those. So you get extra help from ColdFusion. Now, this is kind of the dark part of application building, because a lot of the work that you do to get around not having these features don't really show up in a project plan. It shows up in bang head on your desktop. You can skip a lot of that. Back in the performance piece, multi-threaded programming is a lot easier now. You can even do async stuff super easy, which means you can push processing off so it doesn't block, and then pull the request back when you're ready. This will really help reduce performance or the implications of long-running tasks. Another great feature, anyone use AutoTune? It's a thing that helps you sing when you can't sing, for people like me. But now, instead of that, what they have is AutoTune for web server connectors, because that's the true black magic of tuning. Anyone use IIS? You tune your own connectors? You have any idea what I'm talking about? If you don't tune your connector, you're basically throttling the throughput of your application. The reason why most people don't tune them is because it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's really difficult to know what the right parameters are. So this feature will actually monitor your application and do tuning on the fly for you. Once again, it puts people like me out of work, but you know, times are changing. Yes, sir.
So AutoTune's a feature of ColdFusion 2018?
Yeah. Tune's a connector. It doesn't really work on Apache, but
on IIS?
Yeah, it's IIS. Actually, I think if I'm being fair, it does work on Apache, but they say don't use it for Apache because it uses something that's not recommended. Yes, sir.
Do you enable that in the admin screen too?
I believe so. So what it'll do is what you used to have to do is stop the application pool, manually change the pool size, reuse the connections based on like whatever kind of guesswork you have, restart the web server, hopefully it goes well, hopefully it's the right settings, tweak them later. The problem is there's so many variables in an application, how do you know that's the right setting? So there's math involved when they put it in the feature review.
If you run the performance monitoring toolset, that's automatic.
Perfect. And also, Brian, does everybody know Brian? Hey Brian, Brian and I were talking about multi-cloud. What is multi-cloud? Well, it means a lot of things to a lot of different people. What it means to me is not getting locked in. Now, why is that important? Well, you know, AWS came on the scene in like 2007, and they made some changes to their product over the years and their business strategies, which we'll see in a moment, and they may not be the right choice for you. So what happens if you're locked in to something and you need to get out of it? This kind of goes into your question you asked before. It's the four-letter word rewrite. No one rewrites anything ever. The company I work for, Progress, you know what they do? They do a lot of stuff. But what they did was like 30 years ago, they wrote a database, and a bunch of people bought that database and put it in their products. And it's so tied up in those products that these people cannot leave. It's the Hotel California. And our company can basically do nothing and make 3/4 of its revenue, and there's nothing these people can do about it. Because rewriting is almost impossible. How many times have you told your boss, oh, we gotta rewrite this part, and they went, right on, do it. It doesn't happen. So lock-in is a big deal. So you might ask yourself, why would we ever want to migrate? AWS is so amazing. Capital letter, exclamation point 1, BBQ. Right?
Yes.
The problem is there's a lot of Amazons. Anybody in healthcare? I'm in a healthcare zone, but I end up feeling okay. What about you in media? No? Retail? Amazon's and all those. It used to be. I talked to the architect at Blue Cross and Blue Shield in Massachusetts, and he said, we're getting rid of Amazon. I said, what? He goes, they're now our competitors. And I don't want to fund them, and I don't want to give them access to our data. And I thought, well, that's really Machiavellian. So they're going to go through, well into the 8 figures of pulling stuff from one cloud to another, because basically they see Amazon as their competitor. Did you see that coming 10 years ago? I didn't. Amazon was where I got books from. So if you write it into ColdFusion and you can put your application on AWS, or if you saw a rack sheet session, you should be able to lift and shift it right to Azure, change some configs, and boom, you're ready to go. So being insulated from the vagaries of these clouds can help you. This is a fear cell, so if you want to use this with your boss, just tell them that, look, we want to make sure we don't get too locked in. This is one way to do it. Lastly, we got the support piece. Like I say, this is important. If you're on CF11 and I saw some hand raised, this was your year. You are basically in the node support zone starting next year. Hope that goes well for you. Because I believe security fixes stop after the 5-year support. And then you've got this sort of, you got these little light areas. I worked really hard on this, by the way, so we're going to kind of go through every piece of it. Choosing the colors was hard for me. So this is like the extended support area, all these. And basically all you get is like, oh my God, we need something now support. You get no security fixes at all. The advice is upgrade. Rolling this back 30 minutes. Security is a super big deal. Anybody know Larry Wall? He invented Perl. He's a bit of a lunatic. He has a really great saying, and I'll read this because I think purple on black is a bit difficult to read, but this is my ode to Ben Nadel. There are 3 great virtues of a programmer: laziness, impatience, and hubris. And to define this, laziness refers to the quality that makes you go to extra effort so others don't have to expend energy. Nothing makes me happier than automating a process people have to do. We're all about the same on that one, aren't we? Impatience is the anger you feel when the computer's being lazy. It makes you want to write programs that want to anticipate your needs, or at least pretend to. And then hubris is the quality that makes you write programs that other people won't laugh at behind your back. ColdFusion's been making hard things easy since 1995. Stay on the bus. It's a good time. Get your upgrades. You can say the performance pieces alone will probably save you money just not having to allocate servers. And thanks. We have some time for questions. I think your question is going to be kind of heavy duty, so let's see if anyone else has anything. Any parts I want to see again? Yes, ma'am.
Is there an easy, if we had 2011, you can just buy 2018 and upgrade?
Remember, I'm in marketing now. Yes! Shouldn't be a problem whatsoever. My phone number is 8675. I think the upgrades are pretty easy these days. But I can't answer specifically because there's a lot that could be. Sometimes they'll change something and you have to kind of move a setting. I remember something bit me upgrading once recently, but I don't know. What I can say is that there's some people at the Adobe booth that would love to answer that question for you. They're all wearing black shirts and they're bored, so. Yes, sir.
What's your take on how early to adopt a specific upgrade?
Very loaded question.
I know how I feel about it, but I'm just curious.
The question was, what's my take on how soon to adopt an upgrade? So, despite my flashy dress and handsome winning ways, I do not want to be the first one through the door. Because the first one through the door gets the bullets. And I don't want phone calls at 4 a.m. So I generally do wait a little while. That sort of depends on what I'm not getting. And so, for example, if I needed these performance improvements or I need to allocate more money for servers, I'd probably go ahead and do it. I think the key is good regression tests.
Because everyone's testing.
Pardon?
Because everyone's testing.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. So, back at that education company that shall not be named, they had a QA department, and so I sniffed at what the QA department was actually doing. And the way the application works, it was a multi-homed application. So picture there's 20 digital magazines, all shoved into one application. So they're all running the same code, except for they're not. Because you have all these, if it's this magazine, do something with a twist. Or if it's this magazine, don't do something. So it was kind of like this It's a bit of a monster. So the QA people were testing one of the magazines. Actually, it was the smallest of the magazines, and I knew there was no scenarios that I'm putting my name on production releases if that's our process. And I didn't know QA. What I did, I think this is actually pretty slick, so I'll kind of share this with you as well. You can pull the URLs from request logs. So that's something you can do right now. And you can load those in basically what looks like GET requests, blah, 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 server name, question mark, whatever the parameters are. You can't really do it with posts so easy because it's a lot messier. But you can do all the GETs. Then you can run those, you can load those GET requests just one after another in a big file, run them through Siege. Siege is like a load testing thing, and have it just ping them all. Bing, 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 bing. So basically what you're validating is every single GET request has been executed that ran in production in the last X period of time. And so if you do it every 2-week releases, then you would pull the previous 2 weeks of GET requests and run to the server. There's no errors, probably got a pretty good shot it's going to work out. There's errors, you might want to take a look at that. So that sort of offloads the whole manual regressions or building regressions because I'm using data and creating what's a decent regression through just scripting. And Siege is a free product. If anyone wants to know more about that, let me know. Kind of cool. Any other final questions before we get into why ColdFusion? They teach you to scan the room in a Z fashion. I don't know why. There's one. Yes, sir.
With your HTTP requests through Siege, would that work if you were trying to test something that was behind a login?
I don't remember if Siege holds on to cookies or not. You have to look at that. But if it did, then you'd want to sort of find a way where you can authenticate with your GET requests. I don't know if you can do that in your app or not. So it's dependent. Anything else?
So we're on 2018. We've been on for about a year. I think it's great. One of the big holes we were on 10, and government said that we weren't secure on 10, and we're also Windows 2008 server. So we upgraded our own hardware and ColdFusion, but one of the big things I noticed, we were always getting dinged on our Java patches. We were always, there was Java 8 back on 2000, or on ColdFusion 10.
Mm-hmm.
So with ColdFusion 18, they're on Java 11 on the latest patch releases. And that really helped from a security standpoint.
Were they like pen testing you, or did they have this direct?
They had a big security architecture review and doing pen tests against us.
The lady in the back asked about upgrade process. Can you comment on your upgrade process? Was that an easy thing? Was it a medium thing? Were there some gotchas?
We went from 10 to 2016 to 2018 pretty rapidly. It wasn't too bad, a lot better than the old days. We have a lot of security over it, so they always had some issues with things just, you run the install and you get this error log, it's like, okay, won't boot up, what's going on? But the auto server lockdown didn't work for us at all, but
Really?
But we were
I don't slide on that. Yeah.
we were upgrading and not a new clean install of IIS
Right.
and all that. So.
Which version of IIS were you using?
We're on 2016 server, so whatever the default is on that, maybe it work.
So that's a little test question, because I think I know the answer, but I want to hear your answer. When it didn't work, did it leave the system in a bad state, or did it just sort of throw up its hand and go, nothing I can do here?
Horrible state. Yeah, we
Well, that's not
we
good.
refreshed the whole server
Wow.
to get back to where we were because Adobe couldn't figure out what happened. And
Pay your support, people.
yeah.
It's designed to roll back, but it sounded like you had something more complicated going on.
It's hard to tell. Yeah, it's a really old application.
Many sends over many years. Any other questions, or are we going to get to why ColdFusion? Yes, sir.
Would from 10 to 2018, would that work seamlessly if you upgrade it? Because we ran into a lot of trouble migrating to 10 some years back.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
We don't want to go through that again.
I'm going to say the process should be better, but you should talk with the folks at the Adobe booth and get their take on it. And get their business card in case they're wrong.
I don't think you can go directly from 10 to 18. You have to
Yeah.
go to 2016.
16.
I think you can. I mean, it's an interpreted language, so it doesn't really matter how you move forward. It's what the language supports. And so we moved from recently a fairly large, couple 100,000 line of code app from 11 to 18. And our only issues that we had in terms of that were primarily around things that became reserved words in ColdFusion and using older versions of Cold Spring. For anyone who ever used Cold Spring, still might use Cold Spring. It doesn't work by default under 2018, and there's some people, including Charlie Earhart, who have written about how to get it to work under 2018. But as it's an interpreted language, it's really up to the runtime to decide, is this valid syntax and will it work? It's not to excuse or say that you can't. Don't have to go through and literally test everything to make sure you aren't suddenly using reserved words, variable names that might have been fine for you, like the word final, for example. It will throw an error in 2018 because it's a reserved word, but that's a variable that people might have used for a number of things, particularly for me in the education space. Just that's the kind of stuff you have to look out for, but other than that, I'll say that the performance monitoring toolset by itself was 100% worth the price and time of the upgrade. The visibility that we now have, that we could have gotten maybe through the Fusion Reactor, is there, and it's much simpler to use and easier to use, and gives really great visibility to all of our team in a way that they didn't have before because they didn't want to learn sort of how to do things in Fusion Reactor, and the PMT makes it really easy to see the data that's going on inside your ColdFusion applications.
Thanks.
I will say that there's a code scanner that you can run and know if you're going to have problems. And they also write these notes that talk about what stuff might break in the release. I never read those. I would always do the upgrade, if something broke, get pissed, then go read them. I don't know if I'd do it the way I do it if I were you. They test a lot more than we think they do. But stuff does happen.
Yeah, there's the code analyzer plus the security analyzer.
Yeah,
Security analyzer throws a lot of false positives.
does it? Yes.
Code analyzer is built in, it's one of the things that come with it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of been there for
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah, it'll tell you if you've got any deprecated tags or anything that you need to fix.
Yeah, like Brian pointed out, in his apps, final is something they use a lot for higher education. Well, final is now a keyword. So that takes precedence.
We were using a few of the hidden, non-documented stuff
Oh, yeah.
that we got because they took it out. So we're scrambling to rewrite versions of those.
Used to where you could sort queries with member function that way, back before member functions were a thing, and that was one of my big tricks. And it's undocumented and it caused a bit of pain later. I got my hand slapped. So let's talk about why ColdFusion. What I said a minute ago is my company basically will make about $400 million a year doing nothing because rewriting is hard. And so I think it's sexy to say, well, we're going to move this X technology and here's why. Now, if you can have a business level conversation and understand what the pain is, often there isn't a whole lot of pain. There's just someone that thinks they need a different framework. So, for example, what I've heard a lot, I don't know if you guys remember MySpace. Remember MySpace? So MySpace was on ColdFusion, and they did a horrible job with their program. And then what they did was, rather than say we're horrible programmers, they said it's ColdFusion. And that's a nice, lazy thing to say. But at the end of the day, a good tool in a bad person's hand isn't necessarily a great tool. So I would say that, first of all, if you can understand why they're sort of going down this path, you can sort of change it. Maybe they read a security article that talked about ColdFusion getting hacked and they're afraid of it. You could wind it back to the slide I had here. Like the whole deck in reverse. I mean, what you want to go to Java? That's got the most vulnerabilities. This is .NET, that's still got more than ColdFusion. So if it's a security thing, the factor level. Sometimes it's about resourcing, and I think that's a fair one. People say they can't find ColdFusion developers. My argument for that is, like, how many languages do you have to know to build a web app? Let's count them. ColdFusion, JavaScript, CSS, HTML, some kind of SQL. You're 5 languages. 4 out of 5 is not bad. I learned ColdFusion in a week. Like, there's a site called Learn ColdFusion in a Week. I'll get you somewhat productive. So that may help, but it's true. Like, there's not enough developers in any language to fill all the recs. Anyone having trouble hiring? I know we are. Can't hire anybody right now. So it could be that as a problem, and also it could be license fees. Maybe they don't understand why they're paying for that and not paying for something different. Like .NET, people think they get for free, but if it takes you twice as long to build an app, is it really free? Once again, if you roll back to what I just said, our developers are constrained resource, and you can't get more, so pick the thing that makes them most efficient. Is there what's non-scalable? Money is scalable in some ways. So, going back to what I first said, you got to ask yourself, why are they picking this up? Why are they concerned about moving off ColdFusion? Do they know what it entails? Is it bad performance? Is it the unavailability of labor? Is it an unfounded fear? And that's where I would go with it.
It's all perception generally.
I can say if Progress's OpenEdge customers could get off OpenEdge, they'd do it because they have the exact same problems ColdFusion has. Limited labor force, can't find more. They pay license fees. I'm sure they'd rather not. But what are you going to do? Set your business back a few years while you're rewriting something that works? It's not going to happen. Any other thoughts from the room? You might want to have any comments or suggestions? If you want the slide deck, let me know. Put my Twitter up here. You can grab me. If you want to talk about seeds, I like that topic a lot. So happy to talk to you what I did with that to make quick regression tests and have a great conference.